Good afternoon, good evening, good morning to you all, wherever you're joining us from around the world, and welcome to, I guess, the final section of the SOI 2023 Virtual Symposium, Setting the Course. I'm Jyotika Virmani, Executive Director of Schmidt Ocean Institute, and joining me here, we were on earlier today, of course, is Leonard Pace, who's the SOI Science Program Senior Manager and who oversees all of the proposal submission process. And that's what we're here to talk about right now, is to answer your questions on expressions of interest, our proposal process for scientists and for technology developers, how you can get onto the vessel. We had released and still have them all on our website, some videos. So if you've not had a chance to see those, they contain a lot more information, and we're here now to live to answer any of your questions. So before we get started with that, I'm also going to hand this over now to our fantastic navigator through this whole process, Allison Miller, who is our Research Program Senior Manager. So Allison, over to you.
Thanks so much for that welcome, Jyotika, and welcome to all of our participants as we begin our last 3 sessions of the virtual symposium. Just a few logistical announcements before we dive back into questions for Jyotika and Leonard about the proposal process. Please use the Q&A icon at the bottom of your Zoom screen to answer any questions, ask questions you have, and we will try to answer them within the 30 minutes we've allotted for this session. Closed captioning has also been enabled, so you can turn it on or off using the icon at the bottom of your Zoom screen. And as you heard when you joined, we are recording this session and we will post the recordings on the SOI website within the next few weeks so that you can share with your friends and colleagues and revisit anything that you might miss during this session. While we give our participants a few minutes to start typing in the questions they have for you, we'll get started with a few questions that we were unable to get to this morning. Jyotika, in the video, we talk about the 7 strategic focus areas and how proposers should have their projects touch on one or more of those focus areas. And we had a question on whether those focus areas will remain the same as Falkor 2 travels around the globe in the next 10 years.
That's a really good question. For now, those focus areas will remain the same, but that's just as we're going to evolve that map as we move on through each of the segments, we will also from time to time revisit those 7 areas. And within those 7 areas, you'll see that there's a subsection that we're really focusing on. And so we'll revisit that because as time evolves, of course, you know, maybe in 5 years' time or 7 years' time, some of them may not be as relevant. But for now, they are very relevant, and we think that collectively they will make a very large impact on our understanding of the ocean.
Great to hear. Thank you for clarifying that. Leonard, we had a question about evaluation of the proposals once they're submitted to SOI. Could you talk a little bit about what goes into considering research proposals? In particular, we had a scientist that was younger in their career and wanted to know if that would impact any way the evaluation of their proposal if they had perhaps less experience going to sea.
Oh, okay, I understand. So I would advise a early career PI to consider collaborating with other PIs that might bring more experience to the proposal. But if they choose to submit something on their own, they are absolutely welcome to do so. They would be reviewed equally alongside any other proposals that come in. This is a topic we kind of dove into on the previous call, and that's the review process and whether or not we're going to start getting into double blinding, which would make the kind of review process for an early career person more fair against a person with greater experience. And as Jyotika mentioned, we are strongly considering moving towards a double blind review process so that both the reviewers and the PIs don't know who it is that is involved in the review of their proposal. So I think that kind of gets to everything that person might be concerned with. You have choice of getting other folks involved, so you have a more collaborative proposal, or you have the idea that SOI as an organization may be looking to options to make it a bit more fair and balanced for the research community to submit proposals to us.
Excellent. And is there anything you want to add about the evaluation process just in general, or maybe some tips for writing a proposal that is well evaluated?
On our website, we've got a ton of questions which speak to exactly what it is we're looking for when we review the proposals. Go through those. Make sure you're familiar with the strategic framework. We are going to be looking to the proposals to make sure that they have a solid fit to the strategic framework. And, oh, there was something else that I was going to bring up. It's escaping me now, but I'll bring it up into another question if it comes back. But those would be my first pieces of advice to somebody submitting to us. Oh, I remembered what it was. When you're writing your EOI, remember that the audience that you're writing to is SOI. You're writing specifically to us. We are going to be the ones reviewing those internally. You're speaking to me and to Jyotika and to the staff at SOI. We understand science. We understand the engineering and the logistics required to put a proposal in the water. And we want to make sure that you have a coherent plan, that you're speaking to the priorities that we have, and that you can communicate that to the world. So that would be my advice to somebody putting together an EOI.
Excellent advice. Thank you, Leonard. Jyotika, after this, we'll be learning about how people can come on board, whether they're artists at sea or other Berths of Opportunity participation on board Falkor 2. And we have a question about whether the scientists that are coming on board to conduct their research have a say in which artists or Berths of Opportunity participants are able to join their research expedition.
That's a very good question. So for the Berths of Opportunity, especially for students and those who will be, somewhat more integrated with the science party, after we have reviewed those on the Schmidt Ocean Institute side, we do reach out to the scientist and have a conversation and see if there is a match and a fit for that student or students for the Berths of Opportunity. So I think for the Berths of Opportunity, yes. For the artists at sea people, that's a little less integrated. Their role is not so much necessarily doing the science, but learning about the science. And so they, again, they apply, we review them, and then there is some matchmaking in the sense of, this is the science that's going on. And so the artist knows what kind of science they're expecting to see as well. And then the scientists and the artists will be put in touch with each other as well. So, and it's worked really well so far. We've had some long-term connections that have been made, both between, I think, the Berths of Opportunity students and the scientists that are on board, but also between the artists and the scientists that are on board.
Great. Yeah, it's really nice to hear about those relationships that have been built from working together on Falkor 2 or on Falkor previously. And if you're interested and have more questions about the Artists at Sea or the Berths of Opportunity, we'll be hosting a question and answer session with Hannah after this one. Leonard, in the video that we all watched before joining this Q&A session, you mentioned some support that SOI is able to offer for those that have dependents, elderly parents, or young children at home when they come on board the research vessel. Could you talk a little bit about what that is and what opportunities we are able to offer support for?
Certainly. And before I get into the what, I'm going to go into the why. At SOI, we recognize that there's a huge burden put on the community when they have family members back home, and managing those family ties along with their science and the logistics of it. We recognize just how much of a stress that can be on the scientists and on their thought process when they're out to sea and missing those family members and missing activities that take place. And we wanted to do what we could to try and make that distance a little bit closer, a little bit shorter, and a little bit easier for the members of the science party to deal with. So we developed a program to be able to support dependents, and this program it's got its caps, but it's targeted towards any member of the science party. So it's not just the lead PI, but it's everybody who's on the proposal. And from the students on up to the lead PI, those people have an opportunity to ask us for a small amount of funds to help alleviate those burdens, whether they be daycare or food or whatever kind of help they might be looking for. We're there for them. And to our knowledge, we're one of the first operators doing something like this, and we really, really do hope that other people see it and take it on as an option for other operators around the world. Jyotika, did you have anything else you wanted to mention about it?
I think you did a really good job.
You got a heart. We got a heart.
I know. I saw that.
Excellent. Yes, I agree. I think it's one of the unique things that SOI can offer to scientists coming on board, and I hope that those that come on board are able to take advantage of that to make their time away from home a little bit easier on them. We've talked a lot over the past 2 days about the 10-year expedition map of where Falkor 2 is going to be going in the next 10 years. And we have a question about how we can help, or how a scientist might be able to help get more scientists from the local community involved. So more inclusive capacity building opportunities. Maybe those scientists in those regions haven't heard about the opportunity yet. Maybe they aren't sure how to submit a proposal because this is their first time hearing about it. Could you talk, either one of you, but maybe we'll start with Jyotika, about how we're working to reach scientists that we haven't traditionally worked with in some of those areas that will be new to SOI along the 10-year map?
That's a great question, because this is where we also expand our reach, and we have to make an effort to do this, of course, because these are places in the world that we have not yet sailed. So first of all, we are, of course, looking very strongly for local scientists to apply, and we do need to reach out to them. We are actually connected to a number of international networks already, and so the call for expressions of interest has gone out to them. So, for example, we're connected to the All Atlantic Floating University, and as the name says, they are countries that surround the Atlantic, north and south. And so the call has gone to them. And so, of course, those that are in South America, for example, have colleagues across South America, and it spreads that way. We also have some international partnerships. We work with National Geographic, that has a large international range and reach, IEEE, Marine Technology Society. And then we also are a partner of the UN Decade of Ocean Science and a member of the Ocean Decade Alliance, as well as the Foundations Dialogue. So we have sent notices to a number of different groups, and we will continue to do so as we get further down this process. So that's some of the ways that we are reaching out to communities and to scientists in different countries. Leonard, do you want to add something to that?
I did. One piece that you didn't touch on was the decadal plan here. The fact that we're looking out and we've projected to the community that we're going to be in a given region for the next 10 years to give people time to plan and to find out about it next year, 2 years from now, when they still have a year or two before we're there, so they can plan and build and network and collaborations to develop proposals and to field the projects on the ship. And I'll just give one really quick anecdote that one of the partners that you mentioned there, I was on a call with just today about somebody who was in Africa who found out through that partnership about the fact that we're coming in 3 years, and they're already getting ideas and starting to build those networks so that they can put a proposal together well in advance of us getting there.
I love it. That's the idea of releasing that map. And then actually there's one more piece I want to add to that, if that's okay, which is, in the EOI stage, if you are applying and you're not from one of those regions and you're looking to make connections, please indicate that in there, because we may be able to help you make those connections and put you in touch with scientists.
Excellent, thank you. And while we're speaking about writing the proposal and making connections, we have a question about the maximum number a science party can bring on board. And I know we've also talked about, if you don't have a very large science party, how SOI might be able to help pair you with projects to create a larger scientific program and fill more berths. Leonard, could you answer that question about the maximum number and talk a little bit about how the process would work if a party is smaller in size?
Certainly. The maximum number is 40. We have 40 berths for the science party to request. And then if a proposal comes in that's requesting less, they are judged against all the others the exact same way, with the same rubric and the same considerations. And should we find that a proposal that asks for 2 berths or 5 berths or 10 berths is the one that we want to support, we would first look to find out if there's a way that we can match it with others. We would also consider talking to those PIs about making more educational opportunities available during their cruise. And we would be open to the possibility of sailing that smaller group individually, if that was the right fit for what we were looking to do and where we were operating. But we absolutely want to make the best use of the vessel. We've got 40 berths and it's a global class, so we certainly want to make the most of the vessel, but we are willing to support the best science and the best communications, and we're willing to do that from whoever it is that proposes it to us.
Excellent.
May I add one more piece
of
to
course,
that?
Please do.
Yeah. In addition to your physical presence on the vessel, we have amazing communication capabilities from the vessel. And so we've seen this in the past as well, where scientists actually don't have to physically be on board in order for the good science to take place. So there are avenues for people to join remotely and through telepresence, basically, and participate in the science, coordinate with the science. And we actually had that on this inaugural Falkor 2 cruise that we've just finished. So, and it works really well. So, 40 may be a physical limitation, but if you have a larger group, that shouldn't hold you back either.
Excellent. We did do that successfully on this past cruise, and I think it worked really well. I have a question for Jyotika about technology, and someone is asking, do you have any tips if a proposer would like to bring on a new piece of equipment that currently is not on board, and how to call that out in their proposal, or what opportunities might there be if a scientist or an engineer or a roboticist is looking to bring something on board just to test it?
Yes, we welcome technology development and testing of prototype equipment on Falkor 2. So in fact, that's one of our 7 topics is technologies of the future. And so we are specifically calling that out. So please submit an EOI if that is what you have and you are interested in doing. And we will review that as we review all the other EOIs and look for, if you don't have enough to fill the entire ship, there may be other matchmaking opportunities with science that's going on that's complementary to the technology that you're testing. We also have another relatively new program called our VAST program, and that stands for Value Added Science and Technology. And that is if you are a technology developer and you just need half a day or 2 hours to take your technology away from the coast. When we're in port, there may be opportunities if we're in port for a few days where we can take you out on a small boat, our workboat instead, just, offshore slightly for you to dunk your technology in, do some tests and bring it back ashore. So we have multiple ways for technology testing and development to take place.
Yes, we're excited to have technology on board. So please
Absolutely.
bring it on.
One more thing I should say is we do have a rather large aft deck and a heli deck. So it's not just the technology that goes on the water or under the water, but we can also test aerial UAVs. And so if you're doing something from the air that's scanning the water as well, we have that capability.
Excellent. I look forward to everyone's technology coming on board. Leonard, we have some questions about 2023 and 2024, recognizing the short time frame, and if there's still an opportunity to apply for either of those years. Could you talk about what's going to happen in the proposal process with these years that are shortened, or whether they're already full with expeditions scheduled?
Certainly. So for 2023, the research program is pretty well spelled out. Those are going to be led by PIs who were kind of legacy PIs who were not able to be supported on research vessel Falkor before it was retired. We reached out to those people to try and make good and honor the commitments we'd made to them while research vessel Falkor was still on the water, and offered them an opportunity to be the shakedown cruise year for Falkor 2, and that's who we're using for lead PIs for 2023. And those individuals are going to take us into early 2024, at which time the open expressions of interest is open to those projects for 2024. I highly encourage anybody who's interested in 2024 to get their proposals into us. The deadline for that is May 15th, and the review process for those EOIs is going to be a bit truncated, where we're going to be looking specifically at making selections for scheduling based on the EOIs, and then a conversation with the PIs and a document that's partly EOI, partly full proposal that speaks to what the operations team needs in order to carry out their projects. But we are very supportive of projects coming into us for 2024 so that we can get those reviewed and considered as soon as possible.
Excellent. So you heard it here. Get your proposals for 2024 in by May 15th. So we're eager to get those going, and I know they do take some planning, so I encourage everyone to do that. Jyotika, one of SOI's values that is not changing from all of this new and exciting things that we have rolled out over the past 2 days is the spirit of open data sharing. And so we have a question about, can scientists publish their results before they share their data? What if they want to wait to publish their results before sharing their data? If you could just touch on that.
I might call on you, Allison, to help me touch on this one. So let me just start though with saying that that we offer the vessel, the lab space, the ROV, everything at no cost. And in exchange, we ask that the data is openly and freely available. And that's, something like that, it's hundreds and thousands of dollars of ship time that we provide to each science party for a cruise. But before we embark on a cruise with any scientist, we have an agreement with them that everybody signs, and that includes a data release plan. And so we understand, in some cases, it won't take very long to turn the data around and get it ready for release. In other cases, it could take up to 2 years or a year before everything is put together and, analysis has been done and it's in a good shape to release. And so we work with you, and actually I should say you work with us and tell us what ahead of the cruise, what that timeline looks like. And so as you are the scientist, you take into consideration, this is when publications happen and this is when this will happen. And so we work with you on that joint data release plan. But we have, of course, run into instances where exactly the question you just asked, Allison, I haven't had a chance to publish, or something went wrong. I don't want to release the data before I publish. And I think actually studies are showing that it doesn't make much of a huge difference to release the data, because you've already, you're well on the track to publishing. You've already got a lot of your ideas in place. And so what we did last year was we held a workshop with the Ditchley Foundation to talk about what are the actual barriers to academic data, open data sharing. And that workshop, there's a report from that workshop called Credit Where Credit is Due. And we pulled together academics, publishers of academic papers, data centers or data repositories, and funders to really talk across these different usual silos and see where those actual barriers are, and not just where the barriers are, but what the solutions are. And so we will work, we'll do another one of those in the US as well, but we're going to start chipping away at what those barriers are. And so yes, we have come across that question or that, you know, I don't want to publish before sharing my data, but the agreement that we sign for that kind of cruise time is, there is a plan for data release that goes with it, and that is the exchange that we make. Allison, you are very closely involved with this, so I'm going to ask you if there is anything you would like to add to this question.
I think you did a great job of answering it, Jyotika, and covering all the bases. But I would just add that you are correct in that agreement, we do not make the release of data contingent upon publication. So you can do whatever you want with the data, analyze it and publish it. But once we come up to that 12-month or 24-month time period that we've agreed to, we do enforce that the data is released whether you have published or not. And part of the reason for that is not just the barriers that you mentioned and the spirit of open sharing, but if it's contingent upon publication and then for some reason you don't publish, then the data doesn't get shared. And what we really want is for the data to be shared. So I think we're all in agreement there. Real quickly, Jyotika, I know we have a whole session dedicated to Artists at Sea and Berths of Opportunity coming up, but we do have a question about kind of going back to the local community participant. If they're not necessarily a scientist that wants to submit a proposal, what opportunities are there available for them to participate on board the vessel? So I thought maybe you could give us just a brief overview, since it is something new this year to SOI, and maybe a sneak peek about what we'll talk about in the next session.
Okay. So I think you're referring to our expanded Berths of Opportunity program. So traditionally, we have had scientists, technology developers, artists, and students on board. But with Falkor too, as Leonard said, it's got a lot more berth space. We have expanded our Berths of Opportunity program. And so we are now also open to taking on board people who have a tie to that ocean environment that is off their coast. So that could include traditional knowledge holders, it could include marine park managers, it could include local decision makers. There's a whole different number of people, you know, city planners. There might be some reason that they need to get offshore to see what's happening offshore and to learn about their offshore environment. So we do have Berths of Opportunity, and actually what I would suggest is, I know Hannah's going to talk about this later in a short while in far greater detail and with far more eloquence than I am, but just for now, if you are interested and you're not a scientist or a technology developer, you could send an email to proposals@schmidtocean.org. And that's actually how you would contact us anyway, even, you know, for science and technology developers if you have questions. But proposals@schmidtocean.org, and then just put in the subject line, you know, science, art, student, Berth of Opportunity, and we will get that directed to someone who can have a conversation with you.
Excellent. Well, I think giving a sneak peek into the next session is probably the perfect way to wrap up this session. And I think that we are out of questions anyways, so the timing worked perfectly. I wanted to thank Leonard and Jyotika both for joining us to answer all of your questions about how to submit an expression of interest for ship time on board Falkor 2, and we look forward to receiving all of your exciting expressions of interest and can't wait to see the science that you propose on board the vessel. And like we mentioned, another session is coming up on the Artists at Sea and Berths of Opportunity in just a few minutes. So please check the Symposium website for the link to that session, and we hope that you will join us. And I'll turn it back to Leonard for parting words on how to propose your science project on board Falkor 2.
Oh, no, I can't tell them how to propose it, but I can encourage them to propose it and to do it by May 15th if you're looking to go out in 2024. And I want to let everybody know that we are thrilled and excited to read the project ideas that you have, and really, really jazzed about seeing the community on the ship, and to encourage everybody. Over the past couple of days, you've seen and heard our excitement about what the vessel is and what it offers. But the thing that really gets us all the most excited is the community pushing us to do more with the vessel and to use all the components of the vessel. So dream big, just like Eric King closed out with his.